Kanthi Morrissey, Martin Fiore. So our topic today is tax transformation. Help me with a quick line on why our listeners want to stay and listen to a tax transformation podcast.
Well, if you're still thinking about the tax you paid way back in April or you're just about to pay in October, maybe you want to stay and listen to something.
Okay, and Martin?
Tax starts with a T, so does transformation, and so does technology. It's all about what we do in tax kind of predicts what the rest of the world's going to look like. Trust me. Start with tax and you'll be successful.
Better answer.
Amazing. All that and more on Transformers. What is transformation and who are the people leading those transformations? Today, we are going to talk about tax transformation. And wait, please do not leave. This is about so much more than tax. It's about partnerships, it's about changing business, and it's about how technology works together as the business and business operations change. I'm Ann Funai, CIO and Vice President of Business Platform Transformation at IBM, and this is Transformers, a Think podcast. Two guests, one me. First of all, Kanthi Morrissey, you are the Chief Tax Officer at IBM. And Martin Fiore, you are the America's Vice Chair of Tax at Ernst & Young. One of the things that's been an ongoing theme in the podcast is the importance of partnerships. So, I think for our listeners, maybe two questions like, okay, here's what's this partnership about? And two, like tax transformation, like maybe, Martin, if I could ask you to jump in a little bit about the partnership here and what's the transformative about
All
it.
right. Well, Ann, thanks for having me as a guest. It's an honor to be here. So thank you, first of all. But I would say the partnership has been really unique. If you think about IBM, one of the most complex organizations in the world that does so many different things. And for us at EY to have the opportunity to work with IBM around issues that are very important to them and very important to us really lines up with our strategy. And so to work with someone like IBM is something that we always look for, right? And a client in our minds that, one, is focused on similar issues, two, that has a passion for what we're looking to do together, and three, contributes. It's a two-way street. I always say partnerships are a two-way street, and this is certainly one that I would say is definitely a two-way street.
What about you, Kanthi? Obviously, you're on the other side.
Yeah, it's funny because you and I talk a lot, and the minute the word tax comes up, many leaders in IBM, you can see the eyes glaze over, exactly. But when I talk tax to Martin and team, they get it, right? They understand what we are looking to do. They are also focused on similar problems. They've been looking at the world of technology and AI in tax for a lot longer with the bigger investment, bigger, broader way to look at things. And so that's the biggest advantage we get in the IBM tax team is a partner who's focused, as Martin said, on similar issues, but with the bigger investment, bigger lens, bigger focus, and we get to piggyback onto that focus and the understanding.
And I think what's interesting, and I didn't, we were talking about this a week or so ago, is like really this idea that tax actually touches everything. So, and me sitting in a CIO nerdy seat, I'm like, well, the tech touches everything, but I mean, you've got a flip view of that, and really, I think, it's been working so closely with you these last few years. It's like I've learned something every time we talk. So I'd love for you to expand on really, in the context of a large company, in this case maybe IBM. Martin, you probably have some larger E&Y kind of perspective. Is like tax is a really important part of any business operations transformation.
Yeah, it's funny. Every time it gets a chuckle, every time I say death and taxes, those are the only two certain things in life. And so tax touches every line item in any profit and loss account. You start from revenue, go to cost, expense, payroll, like anything you look at, net income, income tax, like every line has an angle of taxation. And it's been as old as, I don't know, governments, I suppose. And it's a very interesting way to look at things, especially because I do, like you said, the eyes glazing over happens so much. I have to make it relevant when I talk to people. And so that's how I frame it. It's there in every line item, especially to finance professionals. Think about it. $1 sale has a tax on it. $1 purchase has a tax on it. That's, I think, resonates with most people, and it makes it more applicable and understandable.
Yeah, I know. Just building off that, Ann, and what Kanthi said, if you take a step back even recently, pick up the Wall Street Journal any day of the week, and what are you going to see? It's all tax, whether it's tariffs, whether it's trade, whether it's the government working with corporations to kind of get a piece of their revenue. In essence, that's a tax. So it's one of these interesting points in time where AI is very relevant, tax is very relevant. So as Kanthi said, it's a crossroads of regulation and finance and global policy across the world. So it's not just US centric either, right? This is just like IBM. It's a global organization that pays tax all over the world, but the issues are all over the world. And I think Kanthi and I always talk about this. I think this is where sometimes it's missed when you take a step back and look at kind of what's happening around us.
And you've described yourself as a transformation optimist, Martin. Like from your seat as a partner, EY, like what makes you optimistic? What are you seeing that makes you this,
Uh,
transformation optimist here?
and there's probably a few things there too. Probably the most important is if we look at talent, that's the most important thing that we have at EY is talent is the only asset we have. And we've got to make sure that they have jobs that they feel they bring value to quickly. If you think about AI, it takes away a lot of the mundane work that people do when they start their careers, right? You come into tax, now it's exciting. You're adding value almost in your first week on the job because you bring that technology knowledge with you from your learnings. That's like really important to us that you can add value so quickly. And the second, maybe it's just a macroeconomic point of view, is that there aren't enough people for the jobs like the jobs out there right now, right? When you think about, I think the statistic is somewhere every 1,000 people that leave the job market, only 400 join. And if you look at the global population, we're in need of something like AI to satisfy the jobs that will continue to exist.
So, and I love that perspective you bring. It's like there's already a deficit of talent. AI's, it's in this case, it's an augmentation of the talent you can get, not necessarily, but it's also recognition of the deficit at hand. So, trying to bring all those three pieces together. So,
Yeah, I think that's right. I think people, when you sit back and look across the globe, it's actually what you just said. It augments them, right? It's kind of having someone sit next to them and help them through the things that they probably don't want to do anyway.
and Kanti, you and I have talked many, many times on a lot of the work with like AI and really using your team's brains to their fullest. And how do you balance that the human touch versus the true need for automation? AI. I mean, it's going to be here whether you want it or not. And I feel like you in particular, you're really well set up.
Yeah, and for me, you even kind of piggybacking on the optimism side, it's that we, especially the ones in IBM, we have like the access to technology. We have access to partners like EY and Martin, and we are in the best place. This is what I tell my team. We're in such a great place to be able to reshape the profession we are part of. To me, it's a big deal. You get to reshape your own profession. It's not somebody else coming and saying this is how you should operate. We get to define what that reshaping is. It's, to me, the most exciting thing, and that's what I keep telling my team. Let's do it. Let's reshape. Let's talk about how it augments what we do. Let's talk about how we reshape our profession in this greatest revolution. I mean, it's here to stay, like you said. It's not going anywhere. So then how do we play a part? And we're in the best place, best place for it.
When I walk around the halls of IBM, I hear Conte see this and others is that it's you either use AI or you don't. Those that do will have jobs. It's as simple as that. And to me, that kind of takes the fear off the table. Like all you have to do is start investing and understanding it.
Yep, and it's interesting. I don't take credit for this statement. I heard this from a CEO's mouth a few weeks ago, which was she said she's challenging her entire company, and it's a smaller startup, but she said, think about how your job is replaced with AI, and once you can define that, it tells you what you should be focusing on to be to get ahead of things in the future. I thought that was a really I thought there's a really, really interesting perspective. It's been sitting with me a little bit. How do you actualize that, right? If you know what could take your job, well, then there's stuff that requires the human touch that's not possible yet.
That quote may have
Um,
come from you, Kanthi. I've heard you say that before, so I know.
I promise you it was not Conti that said that, but if she did, she can take a
It's
double
close.
attribution.
It's
Double
close.
attribution. Yeah.
It's close. I like this person you were talking to already.
Well, in that same vein, Martin, I'll go back to you real quick. You're seeing customers beyond just an IBM. So, is there is there some consistency? Is there real consistent opportunities that you're seeing, or commonalities, or even like maybe differences by industry of where you're taking a look at and what you're seeing
Yeah,
today?
and Kanti and I talk about this all the time. I think there's this challenge where a lot of organizations hear about AI and just like any innovation, think that it overnight brings the benefits, right? Overnight AI is going to change your world. And what we are always talking about, it's a process, right? You have to have AI, then you have to change your processes. Even more than that, you have to change the mindset of your people and you've got to remove the human fear, right? And so you will get the benefits, but I believe that this conversation about how much you save, how many heads change over to do something new will just take a bit of time. And so I don't think initially there's job loss. I think there's job transformation, and those that transform will continue to have jobs that are much more rewarding.
I think Conti looking at it from, we at IBM are saying, talking about being client zero, about eating, drinking our own champagne, as that would be what we would like to say. And, my question to you is, what are you looking at to make sure we're not just band-aiding with AI, that we're actually taking real advantage of it? So, you know, I've said, AI on top of crap, still kind of just crap. You're investing in the past. What you're doing is you're both trying to transform your business at the same time as get the most out of AI. How does that come together for you?
And I think this is where the mindset we have in IBM has played a part. Years and years, right? We've been looking both in finance, operations, tax, anywhere. How do we simplify? How do we eliminate things, processes that are really not required? How do you simplify your processes? So we've done a lot of that work. We've identified our big issues. And I think that was the big thing for us when we started discussing, and a bit of it we've done it with partners like Ernst and Young, right, where we know what our big problem was, and that was the level of data. Like I said, taxes in every line, but by the time we come in, it's kind of like very late in the game. We're at the last downstream of all the process and data, and so the complexity in that data was our biggest issue. And so for us to, we were saying, oh, we gotta figure this out. And that's where the conversation started on how can we use AI to transform our data. And I think that was the big thing. If it can do that, if it can transform the complexity of the data that we have, clearly it can do the other thing. So that's how we were thinking about it, exactly like you said. You can't just dump it. If the data was bad, the process is bad, put AI on it, it's not going to give the result you want. And so for us, the biggest differentiator, though, was using AI to fix that data issue that we had. And the process we had already thought through for many years by centralizing, outsourcing bits to Ernst & Young. We'd figured out ways that we needed to think through our process, to be able to then automate it. But the big one was using AI to solve the data issue. That made a big difference to us.
In Martin, from your seat, is there obviously the data issue? You've been very tight with us. Is there kind of a next in line, most promising use case you see from observing multiple clients?
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is we're doing a lot of proof of concepts. And then with IBM, this is the difference. When I talked about a two-way street with a partnership, is that we're coming up with commercially viable solutions. And so that to me is the trick, because you do have to invest and you have to get as many people being exposed to AI, and you do that through proof of concepts. But at some point, that hype curve starts to flatten, and organizations start to say, okay, I want to see the rewards. I want to see how AI is impacting my financial statements. I want to see my costs being reduced. I want to see the value it's driving. And that to me is a game changer. When you can get to a point where you have commercially viable solutions in the market, like we've done with Watson X and EY on the platform, that makes a difference. And we have to continue to do that. And what happens is Kanti and I get really excited about each of these proof of concepts becoming commercialized, and you want more and more. And that is the tension point of trying to get the rest of the organizations that could leverage this to use it, right? You've got to get their mind shift to change. They've got to be in the thought process of, oh, this makes sense. I can now bring value around the things that we just talked about.
I'm convinced, Anne, that they have like a voodoo doll of me. They're all putting pins on me because I keep chasing them around for what's next. One thing I want to highlight from the data process, and we actually laid out our steps involved in a tax return, for example, and we said what all kinds of agents or AI solutions we need, and we listed them out. But very recently, we realized that's not the most efficient way to get to what Martin was talking about, like a commercially viable solution. The way to think about it is maybe to pick a process, like a property tax return or a VAT return, and just go end to end, because you've done the data bit. Now adding a few more steps on an end-to-end process, especially with all the talk about what's next, orchestrate, really brings the whole solution to be very attractive to show to a client and say, look, you can do this. You can save your team so many hours because you've gone end to end, versus saying, oh, it's 1/3 of your team that's working on pulling data. It's 1/3 doing data insights. You're not going like that. You're going end to end on a process, which makes a big difference. And these are all small pivots that happen while we're trying to say how to look at what's next. If that makes any sense.
No, it makes total sense. And I think you would say maybe from a CIO type of seat, if there's CIOs watching this, is it aligns actually to the technology also that supports those workflows, right? Yeah, I think more and more it's not about a single piece of technology. It's the interaction of all of them that drives to the simplest, cleanest solution, again, with the data cleaned up, et cetera, which kind of great segue to where I was going is, so it's clear listening to both of you, this is really a shared vision. This is not something IBM alone came up with. This is not something E&Y alone came up with. And, I would make an assertion that we're back to a world that partnerships are more important today. No one can do it all alone. What's your point of view on the importance of partnerships in general, not just each other, but overall?
Yeah, I would say maybe 2 points. And one, you can have a partnership and you can be competitive at the same time. There's always this debate about, is that a partner or a competitor? And I think IBM shows well when you look at your ecosystem of who you work with, the other technology companies, it all fits together. And so to me, that's been one of the lessons learned through IBM, is that it's an ecosystem that will propel in the future. Those will be the successful companies. And what I mean by that is IBM will be working with EY and be working with other technology companies for the same solution and delivering that using what they're best at. And so I think that's going to be a critical part of going forward. And I'm seeing that happen in the market today. And those that don't understand that are really competing against themselves, and they're not moving forward. So that's one observation I've seen most recently.
And a lot of the times, there's no need to reinvent the wheel, right? If there is a partner or a partner product that is going to solve the problem you're trying to solve, then use it, right? And I think that's the philosophy you guys have, right? And in CIO, we have so many tools that we already have that help us with our personal productivity. We're not going to go and solve that. We are focused on something very business specific, end-to-end process, and that's what we will spend our time on with partner in the ecosystem. Because at the end of the day, the world is so hyper-connected. We're all part of a bigger thing. It just makes logical sense, isn't it? That everyone is connected in a way, and the best way to get the best solution is to push that ecosystem to do well.
Interesting question. So we're kind of touching on, we talked about the AI as an augmentation of an individual. You guys talked about, so, there's a lot of tasks in the tax space that can be automated, though. What's your view? I think we're developing a clear view on the very technical side of the type of skills that are going to be needed over the next few years. Is there a skill change or a different perspective you would be looking for new hires at all levels to come in with that maybe isn't a part of their repertoire today?
Yeah. One thing that we keep looking at, Anne, is individuals that have, I'll just call it left and right brain skills, right? And so it's not the traditionalists that we're looking for that, went to business school and that's where they spent all their time. I mean, that skill set is absolutely useful, but you need to mix in with people that may have a background that's much more liberal arts. That might be computer science, it might be engineering, it might be arts. I mean, the idea that someone can be innovative and think through how to apply technology today to the situations that we are involved in is much different than 3 or 4 years ago. And so when I think about the hires of the future, it's making sure that we get a broad base of individuals that have a different way of thinking, and they bring that knowledge to the table collaboratively, and you can see the end result. So that's one area that we're making sure we look at. And the second point is really EQ and IQ are really important today, right? Thinking through kind of what the end result is. I mean, the tricky part about AI and technology is a lot of times we don't know where it's going to end up, right? So you can't see around the corner as much because you can't predict what might happen. And so having that balance of being very innovative and having IQ and EQ in balance makes a big difference.
No, and I love that you bring the EQ and IQ forward. And another concept, again, I will not take credit for this, but I did tell the individual I'm going to steal it. Is they use something called AQ, is what they looked at, adaptability, right? And I do think that's, I mean, we're in this. I think Gartner would say we're heading into the trough of discontentment right now, right? And there's going to be a lot of adaptability for everyone on all sides needed as well.
That's well said. I
Yeah.
think we'll take that
And
with us
and
too, the AQ.
Yeah,
AQ, yes.
AQ,
EQ, IQ, and AQ from
EQ.
now on. And we are asking for the adaptability skills, change management, whatever you want to call it, and then also this skill that Martin was talking about, problem solving. That's a conversation we're having a whole lot of. Business acumen, call it any phrase, but skills, we are having more of that conversation when we are interviewing for specific tax technical roles. It used to be less on, let's say, very international tax, deep tax technical. That also is now, we are having those conversations like, how good are you about thinking about this? So there is a widening of that aperture from being only for operational roles. We're now widening it to all levels, across different operations and across even management roles. We have chats about how good are you in adapting to change. So there is that one. The other one, which I think we all as leaders with this in this world have to be very focused on, is how do you develop the next talent, though? Because as we keep talking about all this AI that is going to do a lot of the business processes, or at least manage a lot of it with human review, human involvement. How do you then develop the next Kanthi, the next Martin, we all worked on doing tax technical work, okay? Like we did Excel files. I joke that Martin wrote on piece of paper. I'm kidding. He's not that old. But the point, though, is we do get into learning with our hands on. And how do you replicate that when people coming out of school doing tax compliance, for example, will be doing it in a very different way? And this is where the conversations extend beyond just workplace into universities, right? Talking to universities, talking to teachers, professors who are thinking about this, as well as training grounds like Ernst & Young. How do you develop this next talent? I think is a very important angle to keep an eye on.
Yeah, no, and it's I think I would assert even like universities at this point in time, they're trying to figure out how to adapt curriculums. They're trying to figure out like, okay, what there's still a baseline of skills. So like again, as a computer science graduate, you still have to understand object-oriented programming, compile, like you still have to understand those things. But the necessity of knowing, the syntax of a programming language is a lot less important than having that foundation, because that foundation tells you when a code assistant spits out, here's a piece of code, you know why it does or doesn't work at the end of the day. But you didn't need to, you know, I'm having like PTSD of flashbacks to find the one semicolon I missed somewhere in this, ridiculously long program, right? And but there's some piece of that with tax as well, right? It's the universities are also preparing students, or they will be preparing students a very different way to join the workforce. Martin, what's your take on that
Yeah,
one?
absolutely. They're working on that now, right? They're trying to figure out what should their curriculum look like. They're starting just to develop AI classes now with an overlay of a specialty like tax or audit, finance, and so I think that's something that's kind of nascent at this point. But it goes back to it's this mindset of making sure people appreciate there will be plenty of jobs. I think there was a recent study, you probably saw it. It was on radiologists. There was a prediction by 2020 that there would be no need for radiologists because it's just all data and how AI could interpret it and read it. And now we have a shortage of radiologists, and now we have to up their salaries to get more to come. And I think there's a correlation there to what we're seeing. Tax is full of two things, data and patterns. So it's ripe for AI, right? It's perfect for AI, but you're going to need people to interpret it to make sure, as Kanthi said, technically correct. You've got to make sure you don't have hallucinations of data, right? And so you think about all these organizations that we all work within, and data has not been perfect. And now it needs to be more perfect because the quality just got a lot better. And so you're going to need a lot of people to kind of understand that, but it's just a different skill set. And I think it's going to take the universities a little time to figure that out, to convert what they're currently teaching to make them ready for the workforce.
And so making it a little pivot to personal. So both of you are arguably, you know, best of the best in your space at tax, probably, on this planet. Yes. That's how, well,
Kanthi is for sure.
Martin just getting no. Well, I'd say, Martin, I'm just getting
I'm
to know
just
you, but if
definitely.
Kanthi loves you, I mean,
No, no,
so,
there are so many people better than me, but go on, Ann.
yeah,
Get to the, yes.
I appreciate learning from you all the time, Kanthi. But,
Thank you.
for you very specifically, you talk a lot about having a love for learning, and that really, it drives what you do every day. And how do you continue that love for learning, not just in tax, but like as a whole person, as a whole executive?
I don't know. For me, the learning is every day. I keep. It's funny, when I joined IBM, I thought I was going to get out of the tax world because I used to work in a firm in India for a few years, and I did not like the world of taxes. I'm like, I'm going to join IBM, and I'm going to be done. I'm going to move over into the finance team, do something else. But the complexity of the work, the tax work in IBM. 21 years later, I'm still here. So every day I'm learning. Some of it is just automatic from people like you, from people like Martin. You learn. Some days it's specific to work. You have to, for new legislation just happened in the United States, learning for it. That just happens. But then there is also, for me, a lot happens with interactions. My team, they teach me on a daily basis things that I could never have thought about. This specific thing on AI, I feel like is the new thing, right? So for me, I'm learning so much about the processes that I've either been part of or have led, and I did not appreciate. And those are all things I'm learning. And to me, that learning keeps going, and I couldn't be happier. Because every day, so long as I learn, I'm good. And so how I keep it going is this work, the work that I do, the work that my team does, the interactions I have with people like you. That's how I keep it going.
Yeah. Now, and Martin, similar question. I mean, obviously, you have a thirst for knowledge, and you have a really unique spot where you see not just IBM, you see multiple clients. It's like, what drives you, and what is there anything beyond just tax, very specifically, that's super important for you to stay really on top of?
Yeah, look, I think it's two things. I think it's one, just you have to have purpose, right? And you go where your purpose is. I love the business world and understanding how it works together, and tax is a subset of it. So I think understanding just kind of how an organization operates, who its customers are, how it takes its customers and turns that into something of value, whether it produces a product that's physical or intangible. That to me is the interesting part. And then you layer tax on top of it. It's kind of like a little bit on the icing on the cake, right? It makes it a little bit more complex. And we live in a world of regulation, trust and regulation. And so you have tax and then you have regulation on top of it. So it's kind of a puzzle. And if you can put all the pieces together, it's kind of motivating for me to see how it all comes together, not just focusing on tax, but the much broader picture that tax fits into. And then I think you're really good at tax if you can figure out that big picture. So that would be utopia. I'm not saying I'm there, but that's what I'd shoot for.
No, I know. I'd love that answer. And so, Martin Fiore, Kanthi Morrissey, thank you so much for joining me today on Transformers.
Thank you for having
Thank you.
us.
And thanks to all of you for listening to Transformers today. We hope to see you back in a couple weeks.